I recently started working with the parents of a teen at risk. Well, actually, in our minds, it would be a teen not at risk, because I think that whole connotation has taken on a new meaning. Today, when we talk about a teen at risk, usually it involves someone who's been thrown out of like 3 or 4 schools or yeshivas, perhaps is substance abusing, not so frum anymore. This was a boy that was only thrown out of 1 school. Wasn't going to Shacharis, was listening to not Jewish music, and the parents approached me. And I have to say, initially I was shocked. I usually don't get clients like that. And my initial reaction is almost like, well, why don't you wait till he's thrown out of a few more schools, then come back to me and I'll help you. Coming to an event tonight is about prevention. And I think that there's been a movement, Baruch Hashem, in our community, in starting earlier and not waiting for the problem to be completely out of hand before we address it. Listening to a parenting lecture. Taking advice when the problems start, not when they're completely out of control. One of the sponsors for tonight's event, Mask, they've been a trendsetter in working with parents and working with children. They started roughly 14 years ago when Teens at Risk was just starting to be recognized. In fact, they were probably one of the organizations that made us more aware and made us realize that we can no longer sweep it under the rug. But for the last 7 years, Mask has been moving as well into prevention and not waiting for parents with children that are already not in yeshiva, kicked out of school, already addressing children at a young age. What Mask offers, and I think that some people here probably are very familiar with them, some people haven't heard, they have a helpline which they've fielded. I'll give you a number here, 14,890 phone calls, unduplicated phone calls from different families.
Families, not phone calls.
Families.
Service.
Thank you, Ruchama, who's the director of Mask. I will be corrected on every mistake I make. And I'll smile. They offer support groups for parents. They service as a liaison to yeshivas and consulting, utilizing the various mental health professionals, recognized, well-known mental health professionals. I was actually once asked to run their groups. I took it as a big compliment. If Mask is allowing me to run their groups, maybe they didn't check my credentials too much, but it was a nice compliment. And the amount of work that Mask has done over the years has really, again, I feel, been a little bit of a trendsetter for other organizations in addressing some of the problems in our communities. Mask today is able to offer, if 8 parents were to call up and would request a group, a seminar on safety for children, they would be able to put that together even in any random parent's home. It's one of the things that they offer. Our other co-sponsor tonight is the JCC of Marine Park. I think the JCC of Marine Park goes very unnoticed for the amount of work that they actually do. If I was to ask somebody to list the amount of programming, I think people would just touch the surface. And how do I know that? Because that's what I believed. And I actually have a nice close relationship with Shia Rubenstein. We were in the morning together. And I once said to him, so yeah, you guys are doing this, 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 and this. And he's like, well, that's just the beginning. What about, and he named about another 10 things. And I was like, oh, I didn't know about that. And I wonder if people here know about that either. Helping poor families in our neighborhood in Marine Park. Providing programming for children in Marine Park. Coordinating events like this. This must be, I don't know, the 20th, 25th event in the few years that JCC Marine Park was formed. And typically most of the work falls on this gentleman's shoulders right here, Shia Rubenstein. So I want to thank him for tonight's event as well, and I would encourage people to ask, what's out there? What does the JCC offer? You'd be surprised about how many services might be available to you and your families or to people that might need that help. I want to introduce our first speaker tonight. First and foremost, I have to introduce Dovid as a friend. While that doesn't lend a thing to his credentials, it does give me liberties to speak about him in a way that I maybe couldn't otherwise. For those that know Dovid professionally, he's currently the clinical supervisor at SAFE. He runs a thriving private practice. He specializes in the field of addictions, certainly in parenting, working with younger children, and there's probably other areas that I'm not familiar with myself. What I could tell you is that as a social worker who's been in the field for a number of years, I still consult with Dovid on some of my cases. And there are many people in the field that if you mentioned Dovid's name, you would get a similar reaction. I can personally attest that he's constantly advancing his training and expertise and is fully devoted to providing clients with the best clinical care. I'm sure there's a lot that we all have to learn. I brought a pen, I'm going to listen, and I want to introduce Dr. Kohn.
Thank you. Good evening. It's a pleasure, it's an honor and a privilege to be standing here in Marine Park. Let me start off by thanking Rabbi for hosting our event tonight, and really thanking the JCC and MASC, both Shia Rubenstein and Ruchama Klapman respectively, as the leaders and at the helm of these two wonderful organizations. I can personally say that I've been working with MASC for years now, both in my private practice as well as through SAFE. MASC is led by somebody that's truly, the word that comes to my mind is tireless, and it's the same word that I would use to describe Shia in all of the work that he does here in the community as well. Two very tireless individuals who are always involved in helping. So it's really an honor to be here and to be part of this. Also, as a very proud member of our community, and as a parent, a fellow parent of the community, this is the second time that I'm speaking. The first time was many centuries ago in Marine Park. We actually had an ashay, where there weren't that many shuls yet in the neighborhood, and there was a sisterhood. And my wife and I hosted one of those gatherings, and I spoke there on parenting. So we've grown since then, our children have grown up since then, and it's really a pleasure to be here. I heard a great line. I don't know who said this, but the line goes like this. Before I was married, I had 6 different theories on parenting. And now I'm married and I have 6 kids and I have 0 theories. So, thank God I'm married, I have 4 kids, I have 0 theories. But as a professional, I can stand here and I can share some theories with you. So I hope to be able to do that with you. The Gemara says, Chazal bring down that as parents we have a job. We have a job to teach our kids to swim, to teach our kids a parnasa, and to teach our kids a trade. I don't know if anybody says this or this is my own thought. I'll take the blame for it. But in teaching our kids to swim, I think that teaching our kids to swim in today's society is just as relevant. Teaching our kids to navigate our world today is pretty complicated and pretty complex. And I think that very, very often we find ourselves as adults trying to keep up and to navigate our society, the world that we live in, and the changes that are going through our world at such a quick pace. I think we have our own difficulties, and certainly as parents in trying to help have our own clarity. What are our positions? What do we stand for? How do we give over ideas to our children? What do we want them to understand? And having clarity about those positions is very, very challenging. I fully appreciate that as a parent as well. So I'm hoping that today our focus will be, for my part certainly, about focusing on the job that we do as parents and some clarity, maybe some theoretical approach to what it means to be a parent and what it means to have a family, and some ideas, some practical ideas that could come from that. I heard it said over from the Lubavitcher Rebbe that he said that parents should spend a half hour a day studying parenting methodologies. That's a pretty astounding statement. I could certainly say as a parent I don't have the time to devote to a half hour a day of studying parenting. And I'm blessed to make a parnasa from doing the work that I do. And I certainly spend time professionally studying and being able to share some thoughts with you. So when we teach our kids to swim or to learn a trade or to learn Torah, and we do that by hiring people or by sending them to learn by others, then we're fulfilling our obligation. So as parents, attending something like this is definitely a fulfillment of our obligation as well. And I know that in Marine Park, we're good parents, and we have good kids, and our kids are still relatively young. And a lot of the problems that are out there, we're at a stage with many of our children where we're really building them and molding them and helping them grow and develop. And so the world is their oyster, and the role that we play is crucial, and we can help build them instead of trying to help fix them. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk about how to help build our kids. In general, in society today, there's a lot of trauma. You know, the events that happened this past Friday with the shooting, and it's not the first, and it probably won't be the last. And society's really grappling, you know, what does this mean? What are the messages that we have to take from it? And the truth is that the Jewish nation is a nation of trauma. We're not strangers to struggle. We're not strangers to challenge. The Holocaust isn't that far behind us. And yet, with everything notwithstanding, as Jews and in the modern society that we live in, we're very devoted. We're probably more educated as parents than many generations before us, much more self-aware about ourselves as individuals, perhaps than many, many generations before us. And so I think sometimes it's very easy to point out the flaws or the things that we still need to work on, but it's also at least as equally important to point out our strengths and to approach this from a strengths perspective. And the interesting thing is that prior to about 1990, all the information that we had about parenting came about through studying problems and pathology. And then in about 1990, this think tank developed. They're called the Search Institute. They have a website. I strongly would encourage everybody to check out their website. I'm not an employee of theirs, I don't get paid for this plug, but I love their work, and I'm going to borrow very heavily from a lot of their research tonight. And the Search Institute wanted to really come up with a framework for how to build children, how to develop healthy individuals. And so they approached it from a strengths perspective. What are the positive attributes that we need to help develop in our children? So we know about the challenges in today's society. We know about the things that we struggle with individually. What do we do with modern technology? What are our positions with cell phones, with internet? What do we do with the fact that our children are bombarded by exposure to the media, whether it's overt sexuality, violence, just crass and insensitive treatment of each other as a human race, and how do we protect our kids? So the Search Institute came up with this idea that the more we develop in our children positive traits, and I don't mean traits like just character traits, I'll explain in a minute, the more likely we help them grow up as healthy adults. And the cool thing about them is that they didn't just come up with a theory, they conducted some pretty solid research to back themselves up. And what they found was that they identified 40 different what they call assets. And they divided it up among ages, so they have a list of assets for children up to age 3, a list of assets for children from about 3 to 8, from about 9 to 12, and from 12 to 18 years. And these 40 assets are developmentally appropriate for each age group. And then they did research and they found that the more assets a child has, the less at risk they are in developing promiscuous behaviors growing up, in developing violence, risk first dropout from school, all the things that we typically would identify, drug and alcohol abuse, all the things that we typically associate with at-risk behaviors. The more variables, the more assets a child has, the less likely that they grow up with those at-risk behaviors. And they found conversely that the children that grow up as healthy adults with leadership skills, with healthy internalized values, also have more of those assets. So there's a direct correlation with the more of these 40 developmental, that's what they call them, the 40 developmental assets, the better off our children will be. And they divide the assets into 2 general categories, internal and external assets. So for example, some of the things that would go under external assets are things like support, family providing support, positive family communication, other healthy adult relationships, having a caring neighborhood, a caring school climate. These things are like obvious once we point them out, but these are things that have been shown. The more of these factors, of these variables in our children's lives, the more of a protectiveness, the more of a protective armor we're providing them with. Boundaries and expectations, what are the boundaries in our family, what are the boundaries in their school, what are the boundaries in the neighborhood, What are the role models in their lives? Are there positive peer influences? So these are some of the examples of external assets. And then they also have another about 20 internal assets. So for example, motivation to achieve. Children should have an internal drive and desire to do well and to excel. Engaging in school, being successful in school, being part of school, being an active school member, school student, doing their homework, bonding in school, reading for pleasure. As someone who can say that they have some real expertise in prevention, I helped develop a curriculum for kids from 5th grade through 12th grade. We have an actual curriculum that's delivered in many different schools that's about developing life skills. So ultimately it's about prevention for at-risk, for the children growing up with at-risk behaviors, but really it's about emphasizing strengths and healthiness. And one of the things that we know from prevention research is that when kids like to read, it's one of the most important protective factors in predicting their future health. And then there's positive values like caring, equality and social justice, integrity, honesty, responsibility, restraint, planning and decision making, interpersonal competence, being able to be socially appropriate and socially effective. So these are just some examples. I don't want to go through all of the 40, just to give you a little bit of a flavor of what I mean when I talk about these 40 developmental assets. And then the really neat thing is that the Search Institute came out with more recent research in the past year or two, and they found that they can also come up with family assets. And they have a list of about 20 different assets, approximately, for families. And I want to spend some time going through these assets with you tonight. And I want to share with you what are the variables that it takes to be a healthy family. What are some of the practical ideas that we as families can institute in a very practical, manageable, realistic day-to-day way. What are some of the things that we need to be aware of that are challenging for us, for all of us? And to know the importance. I saw a great quote. Try to see your child as a seed that came in a packet with no label. Your job is to provide the right environment and the nutrients and to pull the weeds. You can't decide what kind of flower you're going to get or in which season it's going to bloom. So, that's one of the challenges that we have as parents is that the temperament of our children really vary from individual to individual. We know developmental psychologists have identified about 9 different variables from basically newborn that we can identify our differences in us as individuals. Things like the energy level or the activity level of a child. How persistent are they? Do they persevere in an activity? How distractible are they? How easily distracted? What's their response to new situations or new people? Their adaptability, their ability to be flexible and to adjust themselves to new situations. Their mood, their intensity, their sensitivity, and so on. So there's these 9 different variables that really demonstrate that each and every single child is an individual. And Chanoch L'Nar Al Pi Darko, each and every child needs their own approach. But as a family, what are the universal ingredients that we need to know about that can really help us? So I'm going to focus on some of that research with you tonight. So family assets are the everyday things that families do to be strong, even in challenging times. They're the actions that we take to build healthy relationships and healthy family members. And the really important thing to understand about healthy families is that every single person in the family plays an important role. So it's not just up to the mother and the father to create a successful family. It's up to the mother and the father to help the children understand that they're also part of creating a successful family. So the first category that goes under the list of family assets is called nurturing relationships. I heard many years ago an amazing word from the Kotzker Rebbe. There's a pasuk in Tehillim that says, that just like arrows in the hands of the archer, so too are the young children. And the obvious question is, what's the pasuk, what's the comparison of arrows in the hands of the archer to young children? And the Kotzker Rebbe says that the archer, the closer he holds the bow to himself, the tighter he holds it against his body, the further the arrow will fly and the straighter it'll go. And that's how we have to be as parents. So nurturing relationships is where families know that they're stronger because they have healthy relationships with one another. When I say family, I mean between husband and wife and between parents and children. Families that have healthy relationships means that the families are communicating openly, that they demonstrate affection openly, and support each other. So show family members that you care in little ways. So find a new, small, but visible thing that you could do to show other people in your family that you care. Slip a note, a surprise note for your spouse, as in I love you. Send a surprise note with your kid's lunch. And this is just for the moms, but for the fathers too. Keep the focus on the relationships. Sometimes, especially during stressful times, we're unhappy. Family members aren't doing things that they need to do or that we want them to do. And you may have to confront the problem and you might have to deal with it. At the same time, it's important to make it a priority to maintain the relationship even in the midst of challenges. One shouldn't go out the window in that moment. I think that during stressful times, it's even more important to be mindful of the relationship and to keep that as part of the feeling, of the atmosphere in the room. Talk about the everyday stuff every single day. Don't wait for important conversations to have good conversations with other people in your family. Find time to talk together every single day. Ask your kid, for example, what was the best question that you asked today? Or what was the high and the low point of your day? My oldest is on to me now, and he comes over to me when I come home and he looks me right in the eye and he goes, "So how's your day?" And the first, I get so taken aback, my initial response, I don't even know, my hand starts racing, like how am I supposed to answer this kid? And at the same time, I'm so proud that he's tuned into this. Ask other family members about the things that they really enjoy or the things that they're into. So whether it's music, whether it's cooking, whether it's a hobby, be a good friend to your family member. I just recently called my Rabbi. He was making a wedding for one of his children, and I couldn't go. We were going away on a family trip. So I told him that I'm going away with my family for a little bit of a Hanukkah vacation, and he said to me, "Your children should always feel like you spend more time with them than you actually do." And I said, "Okay," and I kept on talking, and he stopped me. He said, No, you don't understand. I'm giving you a bracha. I'm blessing you that your kids should always feel like you spend more time with them than you really do. And really what he was saying was the idea of quality over quantity. That in today's times, we live in a society where we're busier than ever before. And I don't see it getting better, in terms of the demand on our time. And I think one of the most common questions, one of the most common answers that people will give when you ask them, pick one thing that you wish you can have if you could have it besides money, would be more time in the day. But if we're able to take the time that we're spending with our kids and we're able to focus on that time being quality time instead of quantity time, then we're on the right track. Make family meals a priority, especially on Shabbos. Don't take that lightly. Make the Friday night and the Shabbos morning meal be a highlight of our time together. Plan regular family fun nights or family meeting times. One of the things that I'm a big fan of, and I've never heard a parent come back to me who's instituted this and told me that it hasn't made wonderful changes for them, is father-son or father-daughter breakfast time. Once a week, taking out one of your children for breakfast, just you and your child, and no distractions, no cell phones, no agenda. It's not the time to give mussar or to talk about the test they just flunked or the subject they're struggling in. It's just time to bond and talk about whatever your child wants to talk about. One of the things that we know from developmental research is the role that mothers play in the moral development of their children. Now obviously, we know that the mother plays a very important role in the development of her child. What I think is a little less intuitive is how important the role is of the father also in the moral development of their children. And that the more involved we are as fathers and as parents, both mother and father, in the moral development of our children and not leaving it up to the fact that we're just all from Yidden or that we just send our kids to yeshiva so they're just going to automatically grow up to be good moral people. I think that's a mistaken assumption to make. It becomes our duty, but also our opportunity to really play a very, very crucial role in their moral development. Keep track of the commitments that you have for your family. There are apps today for our smartphones that are family calendar apps where the family shares a calendar. Everybody has access to the family events. And everybody gets to see what everybody's schedule is. Everybody gets to be part of everybody else's life. Have a family calendar posted in the kitchen where everybody could see important events that are coming up. But develop the feeling in the family that everybody's involved and everybody cares. And the next category in the family assets is called maintaining expectations. And this is more of the nuts and bolts of some of our challenges as parents. Bringing up difficult topics to talk about their children could be tough, and our children oftentimes are exposed to stories in the news, they hear things that are going on in society. If you know that your child has heard of something that's gone on in the world and it's relevant to some topic that you want to talk about, use that to your advantage.